welcome back to Bitcoin Commando. I don't know if you can see her, but here I have a co-host today. She's with me. She's called Rosie. She's a miniature border collie. She's my nephew and niece. She's absolutely gorgeous, but she should be sitting here because we've been out on the field for about 2 hours. So anyway, what I want to talk today in this video about, well, I think the name of the video is probably going to be gold and silver, or government issued fiat currency. So they say that wealth is never destroyed, only transferred. Now, what does this actually mean? It means that on the opposite side of every crisis, there's always an opportunity. Always an opportunity. And so how do you prevent yourself from the crisis and position yourself within the opportunity? It really does come down to education, and I don't mean the type of education that you get from schools, colleges, universities, but a self-education, really, an independent self-education on how money actually works. Central banking, fractional reserve, stock market, global economy, finance, sort of self-education that you don't get from school. You definitely don't get taught back in school. I didn't anyway. And here's a perfect example. I found this the other day. My mother used to keep everything in the loft. Okay, so here's a little example for you. I was looking through an old workbook of mine. It's an English book. It's actually, I was actually 11 years old. I don't know if you can see that. 4th of September 1980. My handwriting's pretty good, as you can see. It's always been pretty good, to be honest. And it's just it's an English book. But what was interesting is that what I got taught about money at 11 years old is here. It's about the Bank of England. Look, Bank of England is on Threadneedle. It's called the Old Lady of Needle Street. It's called the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street because a newspaper did a cartoon on it. And these are all the facts that we got on the Bank of England, and it was 11 years old. Very basic. National debt, interesting. National debt in 1977 was £63,000, and there are 1,500 banknotes in circuit. I can't believe that. 15 million maybe. But yeah, just on that there. Got a few spellings wrong, didn't I? But it protects its bank with all kinds of electronic alarm systems and time switches. Soldiers were stationed at the Bank of England in case of riots. I don't know what I actually got for that. I think I got a C+ or something like that. I don't know. But that's the sort of education that we get in. Well, we got in school in 1980. I don't know what it's like now. So has the curriculum changed since then? I sincerely hope so. I was only 11, but you get the picture, don't you? Why do children not get taught the fundamentals of something that's absolutely paramount, in failing or succeeding financially in adult life? Does your children understand how money's created? Do they understand the fiat monetary system and how it's actually set up? Do they just understand what fractional reserve banking is? I doubt it. It's just not taught properly, and this is a problem for all of us, really. You just have to look at maybe even ask your children, see what they understand. Obviously we're talking, teenagers. If you've got teenagers, ask them, just see do they understand what this is all about? And there's a good chance that they don't. They've not been taught in school. So let me take me as an example. Like many of you that join the armed forces, join the army, I come from a poor working class background. I'm a council house, streetwise kid from Manchester. And growing up, really, I literally had no idea about money. And to be honest, neither did any of the adults that surrounded me at the time. When it's common to go without, then, you get used to it, don't you? I did anyway. It's normal. So I joined the army at 17, passed the Commando course at 18. I was stationed in this brilliant place called Plymouth. And really, for me, from then on, it was a whirlwind. I was everywhere. I was in the jungles, I was in the desert, in the Arctic. I absolutely loved it. But And really at that time, I couldn't care less about money. I mean, the only thing I cared about was if I needed money, then if it was in the cash point, you know, I could go there to go on the piss, because that's really what it was about at that age for me. And I know many of you will associate with what I'm talking about. As long as the money was there to go out and do what I wanted to do, I didn't care. You know, I wasn't bothered. Outside of the money that I needed then, well, you didn't really need money when I was away, so yeah, I didn't really think about it. And I'm sure that, you know, most of you have been through that situation. So fast forward, you know, a few years. I'm now 22 years old. You know, I just got back from Haven in northern Iraq. Then we went to Kuwait. You know, I've been to war, but I still had no idea, you know, on what money was all about. As I said in the first video, you know, 18, I think I'd set up an endowment and a couple of other policies, you know, but really, you know, I signed them and put them in a folder and forgot all about them after that. You know, it just wasn't of interest to me. But did I need to know about money at that stage? Well, I believe so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, but would you have convinced me at that stage? No, not a chance. Money for me became a focus when I didn't have enough of it. You know, I was probably a lance bombardier, nearly a bombardier, possibly, corporal, lance corporal. You know, and it really was at that point that it started to interest me, and there's a reason for it, you know, because I'd bought a house, I had a car, you know, and my girlfriend who I bought it with was in college at the time, so, you know, there wasn't that much money coming in from there. But for me, you know, it was this point in my life where the financial screws just started to turn. You know, and really all I did was just knuckle down, you know, from going and drinking all the time. I mean, that was still common, that was common throughout, to be honest, but as you know, on the off time. But outside of that, you know, I really knuckled down, you know, really worked on my fizz, you know, really worked on my knowledge, my technical knowledge, and, you know, really tried to gain promotion as quickly as possible, because I had so many bills coming in at that point, you know. But even then, you know, I still had no idea about how the monetary system worked, you know, not a clue. It wasn't really until 1997, you know, I was married, I had a daughter, she was probably 2 years old. 1997, yeah, I read a book, it was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know, and that book did open my eyes slightly, but in hindsight, just only partially, you know. Life just goes on, doesn't it, you know? It has to, you know, we all have different lives, but it just seems like most of us go, you know, through life on this proverbial, like, hamster's wheel. You know, you have your ups and you have your downs along the way, but it becomes impossible to get off that wheel, doesn't it, once it starts to turn. You know, I believe it's a bit like it's like a mental illness. That's the way I look at it now, you know, that 99% of us go through, you know, and the less knowledge that we have, the harder it is to slow that wheel. It just really is, and anything else, you know, outside of that, it just gets harder and harder. You know, you buy more and more, you work more and more to pay for that. You know exactly what I'm on about. That wheel is there for most people, and really the stress of not having enough money, you know, it can affect friendships, your family, business relationships. The competition to succeed is, you know, it's ruthless. It's a ruthless environment where less compassionate people, you know, seem to get ahead. You know, they seem to have the upper edge. It's an environment where sociopaths and psychopaths, you know, become king, literally, as we found out. You know, and I mention all this because even still in my mid-30s, I still did not even know, you know, what real money was. To me, it was the, you know, it was the coins, it was the banknotes, you know, it's what I thought and grown up with, you know, and it wasn't really, I still didn't understand the difference between that, which was government issued fiat money. It's basically not, it's not real money. It's a completely different thing. And really what I found out at that point is that for gold. Gold and silver for thousands of years was used in, as a means of exchange because it was real money. Starting from the 6th century all the way to the present day, we have a history of gold and silver coins, that are minted. And it wasn't really until 1375 in China, that the introduction of the first government issued fiat currency. And there is a difference, like I said, It was also the first time in history where they experienced hyperinflation for the first time. They were printing paper like it was going out of fashion. It was backed by nothing, and ultimately it failed spectacularly. What was interesting though is throughout the whole of that period, gold and silver remained stable, as it usually does. And as we come to see, history tells us these stories and these facts, and it's wise to listen to them. That's really what this is about. Since then we've had, this type of situation, hyperinflation, go up times and times again in history, countless times. There's one fact though that cannot be denied, is that every single government issued fiat currency throughout history has eventually failed. And it's failed through overprinting, causing hyperinflation. China, America, Germany, many other countries have all done this, and one thing is certain: it just does not last. It just doesn't. We're at a point now, I believe, that we're doing this exactly the same thing. Money printing is just, quantitative easing, let's say, is just another word for money printing, isn't it? I mean, it just really is. From a military perspective as well, many of us have seen what chaos is, in countries that have just gone downhill. We've seen it firsthand. And depressions and hyperinflation causes chaos. Just have to look at Peru and Venezuela at the moment. That is in chaos. And this is what happens when too much money has been printed. When a depression or hyperinflation happens or is imminent, war seems to follow. It's just one after another. It just seems to happen. And also it seems to hatch dictators along the way. They seem to follow that as well, and understandably so. You've got whole masses of people that just are in a bad way. So anybody saying that they're going to take them out of that, they're going to follow, and that's what history teaches us. This is historically now where the military industrial complex starts to take over. This is at the point where millions of souls die, millions and millions of people die. You just have to look at the world wars, don't you? Hitler, as a perfect example, was one of those that took advantage of hyperinflation. This is at the point where, for Hitler, he secured his power because of it, and that happens a lot. So, again, this is not designed to be doom and gloom. It's just really not. It's designed as a wake-up call to all those people that feel that money, the paper, the metal coins, the digits that are on a computer in your bank account, is a store of value, because it just isn't. And history tells us that, history tells us that throughout the centuries, doesn't it? Throughout the decades, that one thing that truly counts as money throughout the whole of this time, is gold and silver. Everything else is temporary and doomed to failure, period. We're now in a situation where many of the world's government issued fiat currencies are failing. We saw it firsthand in that video, didn't we? In the first video in 2008, just how close we came to a world banking collapse. Many more countries are teetering on the brink of collapse as we speak. They are printing money. They're printing money like it's literally going out of fashion, and for them it is, and they keep printing like that, and there's just one thing that's going to happen. We're going to see a reset. That's what happens when it all goes tits up. This is when a reset happens. There are other problems as well, that you've got to be aware of. Massive problems that I don't think most people are aware of, with regards to not just hyperinflation, but what builds up to that. So have a look at this video, because this graph is going to tell you something. This shows the baby boomer generation going through the years, and just what are the consequences of that, in the next 10 years. And we're talking the next 10 years. So have a look at this video. It's absolutely, this graph is absolutely brilliant.
cents. Now, this is the demographic for 1940, and the baby boom has not started yet. Then we go to 1950, and you can see that when the soldiers came back from World War II, they started having lots of babies. Then we get into the 1960. I'm right in this demographic right here. So this is the 1960 census, and you can see this huge bump in the population. And as that bump moves through the population, we start getting this boom in the stock market in 1990 to 2000. And the boom continues with the real estate boom in 2007 and so on. That was because of this maximum spending demographic. And then we move to 2020, and here we've got the maximum savings demographic, but the future, you need to look at this maximum social burden here. This area becomes a greater percentage of the population than this maximum savings demographic. And so from now through 2030, this is the time when all of this happens, when this shift takes place. And even if people are not invested in IRAs, if they were just invested in the stock market, not inside of an IRA, this still will cause more sellers than buyers. Here it is again automated, and you can see that wave run through the economy. Now, the reason that there are no children here is they haven't been born yet, so we can't measure those. But we absolutely know how many people are going to be around in this category and this category during this period of time. So that's my take on things. What I said 2 weeks ago is accurate. It's a mandated stock market crash. The beginnings of it, the first effects, start this year, and it's going to accumulate every year. You have the people that were born in 1946 now reaching that age of 70 and a half, where they have to take mandatory distributions and every year liquidate part of their portfolio.
You look at that and it's scary, isn't it? We just can't get away from it now. It's just a matter of time. It is imminent. Is that in the next year? I don't know. Is that in the next 5 years? I don't know. But you look at that graph there, and you see how the population's, moving. And in the next 10 years, I've got to agree with him. I mean, you look at the situation, you can see it happening. You see everything else around us starting to go down. And again, I do believe in that time we're going to have some form of reset. I mean, what is a reset? I mean, a reset is all it is a transition, isn't it? But I think it's the difference between a peaceful transition, and a violent transition. But it's going to be a reset nonetheless. We just don't know at this moment in time. I hope not. I hope it's a peaceful transition. I started this presentation with the saying that money's never destroyed, it's only transferred. And on the opposite side of every crisis, there's always an opportunity, and this is important. This is really, really important that you take this on board and you understand this, and that's really the main part of this video. There's always going to be that opportunity for the people that are looking for it. The people that understand it before things happen are the ones that take action. They're the ones that literally, can come out of this in a lot better way. Because when the system eventually fails, any gold and silver, and this is probably the biggest point that struck on with me. Yeah, it doesn't. If a system fails, then and you've got gold and silver, then it literally can be physically taken with you. This is the difference. You can literally carry it from the system that's collapsed, and you can carry it into the new system, whatever that system is. More importantly, it will always carry its value. That's what history has shown us. Yeah. It'll preserve its wealth. So, like I said, history's told us and shown us that time and time again. So I believe that knowing this information, really knowing this information, understanding it, and then more importantly, acting upon it, could be the difference between future wealth and prosperity, or on the other side of the coin, abject poverty. I mean, it's literally a fine line, isn't it? And I believe the window, as you see, is in the next 5 years. It's definitely in the next 10 years. So you've got to ask yourself the question, you know, have you already protected yourself? Are you already involved in gold and silver? Do you own any? Is there any that you can put away? You know, got to look at this information and start to act on it. And I believe it's time to start looking at, you know, having a good hard look at what it's all about. But I do believe that there's going to be a financial transfer of wealth. I'm pretty certain it's going to happen. You know, most forecasters do, don't they? Before that though, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin Commando. It makes sense that I'm going to speak about it, otherwise known as digital gold. And if you've looked at the last post I just put out, then you'll see that it's starting to go. But I'm going to cover those details tomorrow, and it's really, you know, in the next video, because that's really interesting. I do believe Bitcoin has only just started, and I do believe it's going to become more and more valuable. So, you know, if you've enjoyed this video, then please like, please share, you know, with like-minded people that you feel would like this information, you know. Appreciate your time. So also please subscribe to Bitcoin Commando on YouTube, you know, if you're a YouTuber, and I'd appreciate that as well. So all the best till next time. Like I said, next video will be on Bitcoin, the basics of Bitcoin. So until then, Bitcoin Commando out.